Okay, I'm going to do another follow-along handstand session today. Now I'm going to train myself on the canes. You could do exactly the same thing on the floor. There's just going to be a couple of changes, but I'll talk about those as we go. And I'm going to primarily use the smaller canes. I'm going to do a warm-up, so I'm going to do some flexibility stretching. If you're already warmed up and you're ready to go, or you have your own warm-up, I will put a timestamp somewhere up here somewhere, just to say what time to skip to before we go into the handstand stuff. So I'll do a general handstand warm-up, some shapes, some movements on the floor, on the canes, and then go into weight shifts and then one-arm work. So first of all, I'm just going to open the hip flexors up. So I'm going into a posterior tilt, tucking under. I'm going to go in a little bit deeper. So I'm going to take this front foot further forwards than 90 degrees and actively pull the hip towards that front heel. So I'll be holding here about 30 seconds. I will change. So I'll go into a stronger stretch and come back out. Stronger stretch and come back out as I go. So roughly 10-second holds. I don't really format it too much apart from that, but I go more on feel. And then I start to do the same thing, going back, lift the foot up, grab hold of the foot if you can. And now I still want to get that tuck under and that opening. So I'm really focusing on this hip pushing forwards and down. So I feel a good stretch through the quad hip flexor now. Now, if you are very tight in your quad, so in the thigh muscle here, you might find that you don't get too much into the hip flexor and have to, Rosie, no, you have to do that separately. Okay, same thing on the opposite leg. So start off with that, not lifting the leg, deep lunge position, posterior tilt in the pelvis, so tucking under, open the hip, leaning back slightly. You just don't want to feel it into your low back. So I'm being quite aggressive with this and pulling down as hard as I can, hip towards the heel. Same thing, but with the foot raised up. Okay, come back out of there. Now I'm going to go into hamstrings. So I'll go single leg. Rosie, come out the way. So I'm going to lock out that front knee. So lock out the front knee there. Go as deep as I can now, making sure that this hip stays on top of the knee, this foot stays down towards the floor. If you want to wind the calf up, if you're trying to go head to toe, you could pull on the foot as well. So slowly going deeper and deeper. I don't do so much contract relax with this. I just do more of just a active pull down, head towards the toe, trying to keep the back flat, pulling the hip down and back. So the left hip is being pulled, like trying to pull the femur out behind me as I do it. Okay, same thing, swap sides. So locking that front knee out, keeping the back hip on top of the back knee. I have a big difference between left and right. My right side is much tighter. Got an old ankle injury on this side, and this calf is super tight. My hip's tighter as well. Now, because I have done the hip flexor and I've done the hamstring, I'm going to swap legs again, and I'm going to go towards a front split, just because I like to do them every time I warm up. So just trying to stay upright and try and stop this hip from twisting me. You can see it's the hip flexor that's restricting me there. I'm only going to spend like 20-30 seconds in this position. If it was a longer session, I would do more variations of the front splits. Same thing, swapping over. Okay, coming out of there. I will be doing some straddle middle split work, but I'll do that as I warm up the actual handstand. So just exploring, making sure you're pushing the floor away from you, shoulders on top of the hands, placing lots of weight into the hands. I'm a big fan of this one, peeling the hands up and down, but keeping weight into the hands. So not putting too much weight back into the knees, different positions. Now I find I don't need to do much more than this, and then my 2-arm handstands will be my warm-up, even more for the shoulders and for the hands. I will do this shoulder stretch a lot, so pushing the toes in. So going on to fingertips, but making sure that I go into a posterior tilt, so tucking the tail under. There, looking at the fingers as I pull the chest down towards the floor, keeping the toes pushed in, looking at the fingers. Nice, and then come back out. It's actually raining in Perth, which is unusual. Okay, I'm just going to do a few kick-ups to handstand now, see how everything feels. So consecutive kick-ups like that should be quite comfortable if you're going to go into one-arm work. I'm now going to go into some patterns where I'm going to stay up for longer. I'm going to go between straddle, I'm going to go between tuck. I'm going to be moving the shoulders and the hips around. No real sequence or set sequence. I just want to explore and get the body ready to be able to move around. So warming the shoulders, the scapula, the hips, the knees, the hamstrings, the quads, everything, warming everything up as we go. So this is where I'm going to start to add in some middle split work. Lots of Cossack type stuff to try and get into each hip. And then I'll slowly open up to my deepest middle split position. I'll play with open hip and closed hip. So I'm trying to open the hip now. So now I'm going to do exactly the same, but I'm going to move on to the canes, because this is where I'm going to do my main sets and reps. If you're going to continue on the floor, just do exactly the same, but continue on the floor. You can use blocks. You could do whatever you want to do in terms of hand positions, what you're going to use. Now these canes I'm using today, these are basically just using raised up blocks because there's no movement in the cane itself, because it's a very rigid stem. The thinner canes you see circus performers use move a little bit more, so that's a different type of balance than using like this. This is just like a block but on the floor, but raised up. So more middle splits in between. This time I'm going to use the canes a little bit to keep myself more upright. You could use a box or something to raise your hands up onto. Okay, I'm now going to go into the one arm work. Now I'm just going to start with some weight shifts to start with. Some simple flagging, so moving side to side. Now I'm not prioritizing the flag, I'm prioritizing the weight shift and the control and the movement over to one side. So I'm going to kick up to handstand. I'm going to look across to this hand. I'm going to shift some weight over as I do a slight flagging movement. And I'm just going to hold there for about 5 to 10 seconds. I'm going to then return back to center and I'm going to do the same thing on the left side. Now, if you're new to this one arm training or if you're just beginning this journey, then that might be your work. So just really concentrate on trying to do that to get to the point where you can look across to this side. You can shift some weight into this hand so this hand goes a little bit lighter and that you're like pushing into this side. So you're not going like this. So I'm not moving my hips or my shoulder this way. I'm getting on top of this block. So it's like this. So I might be here and then I push in with the side so everything stacks on top. We don't want this or this. Okay, so it's trying to pull your body across as you move on top. And also not shifting this shoulder too high. So if I'm coming to this side, then it's this. It's not this. So next set I'm going to do exactly the same, but I'm going to decrease all of the weight out of this hand. I'm not going to go up onto fingertips. So I'm going to try and get to the point where there's no weight in this hand. I can move it around, hold for like 4 or 5 seconds, show control, come back, do the same thing on the opposite side. I'm actually going to start with my left side first and then my right side. So I'm much stronger on my right, and I'm going to alternate set to set which one I start with. So again, rest in middle splits. Okay, now as long as I was successful with the last set and I got to the point where there was zero weight in this hand and I was just using the hand to balance, I'm going to do exactly the same thing. The layers, so I'm going to look at this side, I'm going to flag over, pulling this side in. I'm going to decrease the weight so there's no weight in this hand. I'm going to go up onto fingertips. So I'm just going to go onto 5 fingers. Now when I do that, I'm going to try not to hike the shoulder up. So I'm going to need some bend in this elbow. but I'm still going to try and have zero weight in these fingers. There will be a tiny bit, but ideally it would be zero. And I'm literally just using the fingers to balance with. So if that's getting too tricky for you, or you don't think you can go beyond that, stick with that one. Stick with sets and reps there. What you might also need to do one side, come back down, rest, do the other side, come back down, rest. Now the next one might be slightly different because I'm on the canes compared to if I was on the floor. If I was on the floor with this one, instead of coming up onto less fingers, I'm going to go out to the side and I'm going to use two fingers and just put two fingers down like this on the floor. So my hand would be reached out there. Now obviously I don't have a floor now because I'm raised up. So I'm going to go to one finger, see if I can hold here. And now my one finger is assisting in the balance. It's not holding weight. What we don't want to do is make this finger super strong and have it so it's bending over when all the weight's in it. I want to have it so it's just helping me balance, stopping a bit of rotation, but it's not helping me with weight loading. Okay, then I'm going to rest again back into the middle splits. Okay, now the main event. So what I'm going to try and do now is go through those steps. So look at the hand, transfer the weight, deload the hand, go on to fingertips, go to fingertip, and I'm going to reach off. I'm going to see if I can hold 5-10 seconds with control, come back, reset to the middle, look at the hand, shift the weight, fingertips, one finger, hand away. So that's the goal. Try and get 5 to 10 seconds on both sides. That was a good example of right to left. My right's confident. I can normally get 20 to 30 seconds on that right first try. Left side's hit and miss. There was like 5 or 6 seconds then on my left side. So that left side needs a little bit more warm up for me. So this is where I'm now going to go into my sets and repetitions. I'm going to be aiming for 5 to 10 second holds on both sides for a few sets. And then I'm going to play with some harder variations, different shapes, lifting the hand up and things. Wherever you're at, I'd recommend that. You're going to 5 to 10 sets, working sets now at the level you're at. It might just be the weight shift. It might be weight shift with fingertips. It might be one finger. It might be finger to the side if you're on the floor. It might be lifting for like a second, coming back. Just see if you can come back with control, return to center. Doesn't matter if you split it and do left side first, come down, rest, do right side and vice versa, or whether you do it like I'm doing it, back to back. So let me know if you have any questions. Let me know how you go with your sessions. Stick it in the comments below or message me direct. Thumbs up and subscribe would be appreciated. And I'll speak to you next time. Thanks, guys.